Meteor Hammer isn't really fire. There's another
kind of is.
Kind of is. Well, whatever. We can find out what items they build as we go into game number 2 of Sparking Arrow Gaming versus RNG with MLP and John X Fire.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are officially here for Game 2 between RNG and SAG, and it is, of course, MLP and John X Fire once again. John, welcome back, sir. How you doing?
Doing great. You know, second game coming up here. RNG having a spectacular showing in that first game. Just having a really great time with all the kills on board. SAG coming out with a bit of a better draft. We're going to have to see if Son Goku can hit that point, as the panel mentioned, where he's just sort of uncontrollable, but everyone seems to think RNG's got this in the bag. I think the draft shakeup might be enough to give SAG a shot into Game 3. I'm going to maybe play a bit of devil's advocate. Still have to see if our Ursa as well will go for that itemization and just constantly getting the enrage off. And if we reach long enough to get something like the Spell Prism to help out with the uptime on that enrage, of course, that does mean the game will have to go slower, so SAG might want to force out a bit of a slower pace there to hit that insane point with her Ursa and with her Timb. But it should lead to some more opportunities here for SAG. Like, there's still some pressure to get XCJ on point with the eggs coming out. We didn't see the biggest impact last time around from the Phoenix. Let's see if they can kind of play around the timings they have on hand this time.
Begins.
Yeah, and actually in mid lane, of course, we're seeing both teams once again posturing very aggressively. It will be a 2-for-2 though, as you did see IDC did sneak one on the Ursa. So he does manage to get away with +1 for SAG and does even out the bounties. So you kind of talked about the shard build up on the Ursa, but I can almost guarantee he'll go for the shards at some point. So this shards is just completely broken, having 1.5 seconds of enrage every 6 seconds. Or rather 8 with the Earth Shock, but you know, assuming you get a Spell Prism later on or something like that, it can be a little bit silly.
Oh yeah. It's just hard to deal with, and you've got some pretty good lanes coming out for both sides here. We're looking at mid for a bit. You see D-Stones up against 7E. The Beastmaster making it showing once again. 7E on the Tiny should still be able to get some control, but I think this is much better for D-Stones. Compared to starting against the Viper, you're a melee hero up against a melee hero. The Wild Axis damage will stack up on the Tiny down the line, and you just have to be cautious about your spacing a bit. There's burst opportunities for sure on our Tiny if you go for the traditional kind of avalanche toss build-up, but again, there's been words about just focusing on the tree grab as well, so we'll have to see what the commitment we'll see from that Tiny on mid down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. Because one thing the panel was talking about a hell of a lot was God King on this position 1 Prophet. It's something we've seen God King do this before, but against the Timber, it does seem kind of counterintuitive. Does this pick bring you a little bit of confidence, John? Do you like the carry NP? Do you think it's a bit weak?
I think it's got some openings here. Like, you look at the level damage right now. Level 1, right-click damage with a Blightstone. You can really apply a lot of pressure onto the Timbersaw. Level 1 reactive doesn't do much. So Son Goku's forced to play a bit more conservatively, get some more regen on. You can see God King's sort of working this lane really well in his favor. 8-1 right now in terms of last hits. Again, sort of repeating what happened in Game 1. IDC up top is just half of that last hits, and as long as you maintain that sort of pacing in the lanes, you're always going to be happy on RNG side.
Yeah, look at this. XCJ and Felix Xiaoba just can't get enough of each other, but it looks like XCJ may have been on the losing end of that trade, but he does manage to Icarus dive and salve up. These two just can't get enough of each other, apparently. Exact same heroes as well. Still seems like the Snapfire is more than happy to just fight like that if necessary. We'll also say, John, that I do like the fact that IDC is farming better this time on the Ursa. Of course, last game around we did see him struggle a little bit early on, but actually mid lane. Bit of a toss up there onto D-Stones. He's actually in a man fight for a bit. 7E doesn't really want a bar of this. Those axes, they are starting to get very painful indeed.
Yeah, it's just not something you necessarily want to deal with. Like, sure, Tiny's got burst with Avalanche Toss, but if you don't kill him, and he stays around, spams his own axis out, doesn't lead to a good time. You see one difference here as well. XCJ's rotation for the Bounty Rune pays off without him dying. So you don't have the supports of RNG being as active. They're sort of more focused in on their own side lanes, which means that, well, D-Stones is going to be down 1 bottle refill at the 3-minute mark at the very least here.
That he is. See how 70 plays on this Tiny this game. I mean, it's Last game on the Viper, it didn't feel that impactful, especially after the laning stage, but hopefully this game we can see a little bit more out of 7-8. We are going to have a bit of a quiet period early on, of course, but you are seeing a very similar thing happening. D-Stone's just moving back into the jungle, flash farming that up, moving back into the mid lane this time rather than just kind of avoiding the mid lane altogether. Well, runes are about to spawn up for 7-8. Actually make the rotation down towards the bot side where Super is in a spot of danger. SRF is locking down with the glimpse for a second, but it is enough damage. The pass to the right click out from SRF, it does prove to be enough. And they do secure first blood this game around.
Yeah, that's really good news coming out for SAG. They want to be the aggressors this time around, especially when you've got the tiny core. You can see the tips coming out here from IDC as well. Onto Flyby. He's having a better time in the Ursa. Like, it's still not amazing, mind you. 18-0 on the Ursa. You're lagging behind the NP by a substantial bit. You're still getting farm here on Flyby. And again, you're seeing IDC left alone. So you get the rotation out in XCJ. You're leaving your Ursa vulnerable. There could be a kill opportunity if you're not careful there.
God King really playing on the edge there. TPing out at the last second, making sure he gets every CS he can get. Of course, top lane, they are starting to pressure quite aggressively. Cookie is out onto XCJ. He has no Icarus dive either, so this should be a guaranteed kill. Scatterblast does land with the Impale out from Super. Flyby will happily take the kill for himself. Very unfortunate stuff there for XCJ, and of course now IDC is not going to have a very good time either because they're just going to run him down past the tier 1 tower. With this tanky Centaur, you can't really get away from him surely. IDC, he has TPs coming in from his teammates, but now RNG just want to try and back off after forcing these rotations. Flyby, he's in a spot of danger. Very awkward scenario here for the Centaur. Super moving back in. The Scatterblast does land into the double impale. And Flyby, he is still running out of there. He does have a TP, but he's trying to find the right spot. SRF has been patiently waiting, but little does he know, there was actually no stun on SAG to cancel off the TP, so he could have TP'd out immediately. Still, I guess you would assume Glimpse was up on a level 3 disruptor, so he held out on it.
Yeah, it's a great rotation out for SAG. That does free up some time for RNG to secure those first tower runes coming out. So D-Stones grabs the Invis. He's one step up on region. He's #1 in that word right now, but you're not lagging too far behind the Tiny. So you're still getting that impact out here for 7E. He's still getting that initial farm in levels. They have sort of allowed God King to free farm the bot lane, but again, you're not seeing a significant lead from any of these cores yet. Son Goku's still holding the lane well. Level 6 on your Timbersaw at this point means that you just can be left alone and do just fine here.
God King out of the bot lane again. Top side, IDC, he was trying to go onto Felix Shalba. Did not really work out in his favor. Well, that bot lane, it is being pushed in a little bit with the siege creep at Super. He'll try and defend this by himself. Could be a little bit challenging though up against the Timbersaw, so they might just decide to allow that tier 1 to go down, or maybe not. There are TPs coming in now. We see the Beastmaster, D-Stones, he's there. Son Goku is going to try and run, but of course the Roar is going to fly out. Super will have the follow-up stun, but do they have the follow-up damage? Son Goku is trying to chain away, but is not going to be able to get out. It's a very nice kill there, down to the bot lane, but now Flyby is in danger topside. He doesn't have Stampede, but he does have a Cookie. Unfortunately though, he got tossed up and does die, and now Felix, well, he's going to be just fine. He was unable to help out the Centaur.
Yeah, you're seeing some good aggression here from SAG, though. They're winning out just a bit more. They're getting a few more kills on hand. They get the kills under Ursa as well, and 7E's around to soak some of that. So it's a bit more impactful for these cores to find that initial EXP injection, initial gold injection from these pickoffs, and that should lead to a bit of a better time for SAG to get their build up. There's still some key items for RNG to save up for, but they're just keeping that aggression up top.
It's going to be very careful. That Sunray damage does start to stack up quite a bit, even at level 1. It's going to be just fine for now.
Yeah, it's not quite enough damage.
What's God King building up into? He's got that Blitz Knuckles queued up on the Nature's Prophet.
Could be maybe a Witchblade down the line here, trying to build that up, or just trying to get that initial right-click damage off. Probably a Witchblade here.
Yeah, it probably is a
Should be.
Witchblade, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, it did get buffed up. You like crying about that poison attack being True Strike now. There's no real benefit to it here. Like, no one really has evasion. I guess maybe if someone goes for a halberd down the line, but it's always good. You know, it's good stats for an NP. Allows you to be aggressive early on. It looks like RNG just wants to hit that point where you get the Witchblade up, you get the Ags up, and your Beastmaster, and just run around and force some issues here.
7E, move in onto Felix Sharma with the avalanche toss. Not going to be quite enough damage. In fact, they might have some turn potential. So 7E is going to have to be backing off immediately. It's always a bit of a demoralizing sign when you can't avalanche toss the supports and just kill them. 7E, you'll have to just move back in and get some more farm up and keep working towards that Blink Dagger. Again, very frustrating stuff for the Tiny, I'm sure.
Yeah, I don't think he minds too much not finding those pickoffs. It keeps the rest of the heroes of RNG in check, so they know where the movements of these other supports are. They're buying space out from Ursa to just freeform that jungle, and in this case, because it's an Ursa, going into the Battle Fury means that you're going to have flash farm potential. You're going to be able to overtake the Nature's Prophet if it's not careful, because, well, the NP can be all over the map. It doesn't clear as well as Battle Fury.
Here we go again.
So you have to watch that.
Mid lane, SRF going to be targeted. In fact, they found another in the backside. They've got IDC. He's going to try and Earthshock out of there with the Enrage, and he does get selfed up by XCJ. 7E, he's around on the Tiny. This is very clever from RNG, and they did this in game 1. They forced the top tier 1 tower. The Timbersaw TP's up to defend that top tier 1. And then they go immediately into the mid lane and start forcing the tier 1 mid instead. But without the Timber around, you can't really defend this. And eventually, of course, Son Goku, does make his way over. But look at the damage that's been dealt.
Yeah, it's down way low. The next shove in from RNG should lead to that tower being taken out. You can see SAG trying to take this opportunity to clump up as well. Son Goku can just soak through that damage. He's got the Hood of Defiance up. With the Soul Rings, he's got a lot of HP regen on hand, and the magic damage isn't going to hurt as much. But their push potential just isn't as fast. Like, sure, Timbersaw can tank and maybe clear out the wave, but you don't naturally shove in the same way an NP, a Beastmaster, even a Centaur does, and the top tier 1 now is going to fall.
It's really perfect play from RNG. As long as God can get himself out, but it's going to be hard now. 7E's chasing him down, and Son Goku is going to be able to find him. That flyby, he's not safe either. SAG really wants to punish quite hard for this. Enrage up, but while they're doing this, their mid-tier 1's being pushed in again. So they do get 2 kills, but they're going to lose that mid-tier 1 tower. I don't know if you can call this a win. In all honesty, John, you're losing so much map control here for SAG. While you found 2 core pickups, they almost lose SRF there. In fact, they might still super. He won't be able to close the gap. But I don't think SAG should be too happy about this. Losing that mid-tier 1 and top tier 1 is going to make it much harder for IDC to find the farm on his side of the map.
You don't have any offensive wards yet from RNG, but Super's already just walking around with a Vendetta, keeping track on the Ursa. They can opt to play aggressive from this point, get some aggressive wards once more, start to secure the Roche for the timing with your Beastmaster. I believe Beaststones is only 1 part away from the Ag, so you're starting to hit some timings here for RNG to be online. And SAG, you know, they're still looking good 3-5. They do not have the network lead. Most of their golds really kind of stuck on their Timbersaw right now, which is, you know, it's nice, but you really want your Ursa to get a little bit more, and he is blocking right now out of all the course. Not a big difference, but you still need some space out for IDC, and he's going into the Battle Fury, and after that, you have to wait. He's going for BKB next. Maybe once you hit the 20-minute mark, again, the shards come in, and then that's a different story for the hero, but that is some time you have to wait for here on SAG's end.
Off lane. Son Goku does get stunned mid-chain, and with the roar out, he should have no way out of this. Cookie is there to follow up, and he's a tanky boy, but it just won't matter. Tips coming up from Flyby now, and they kind of want to return the favor towards SAG as IDC. He's been very aggressive with the tips, on the Ursa at least, and it looks like RNG are ready to kind of give it back to them. Shout out to Emo, by the way. I'm sure he's the one that actually started all this in the first place, but I love to see it. I really do.
Yeah, I mean, you see SRF with a question mark, right, as his current username. Definitely taking some inspiration there. There's a smoke out from RNG. Could be a really good wraparound. There's no mid-tier one to cut them off.
XCJ gonna get caught immediately. He does have the Icarus dive, and is gonna be able to make it out. XCJ now thinking about turning right back around. Do go with the chains in and the glimpse out onto Flyby. He does stampede, but he's trapped up in the kinetic field, and he is gonna die. Nice pick up there from SAGs. They look for more. Felix Schauber be scouted out by Son Goku, but he's going to have enough. Super's still around. They will avalanche toss, but Felix is still alive, still surviving. In fact, SRF, he's the one caught out. He's going to die in the Disruptor, and now the TPs are going to start coming in. Son Goku, again, he's really not that tanky at the moment, and he's going to die. XCJ, well, you've got an Aghanim Scepter up on D-Stones, John. No cooldown on the axes means he can keep throwing them out. And while they got Felix Schauber, it's not really worth their time, SAG. They lose too much.
No, I mean, they do feel pressure to be aggressive with his timing.
My goodness.
Not enough.
He dropped an item there, D-Stones. That was a very close call. I believe it was the Axe he dropped as well, John, because he was trying to Soul Ring. So had that Avalanche Toss killed him off, that would have been the Aghanim Scepter gone. Very close call.
Yeah, and you can see here for the side of SEG, they get these good fights off, but they're really tied into cooldowns. So they have to have Egg, they have to have Static Storm up, and when you expend those spells, RNG can just go for the turnaround, go for the cleanup, and they've got really good burst damage. They don't have cooldowns to wait for. I mean, Ags on Beastmaster is 0, so they can just maintain that presence, and there's just not enough yet from SEG to play outside of these spells, so they need to think about how to approach the fights after their team fight spots come out. They need to really think about diving further, because once the Egg's gone, once the Static Storm's gone, a lot of your damage and control kind of disappears, even with a Tiny on hand.
Oh, this could be bad again for SAG. They're going to try with the Kinetic Field and Static Storm right onto Super. They'll get the Nyx Assassin, but now the Roar comes out. They've caught 7E, and they kill off the Tiny. Here comes the Stampede, Flyby, a great stun initiation, does get the Phoenix. Looks like Son Goku is going to try and fight back now with the IDC, but can they get it done? D-Stones is very low and does eventually die. They get a glimpse back onto Flyby, into the Cookie though. Flyby still alive, in fact a follow-up stun now, just holding them down. He will try into SRF. And SAG this time will be able to make it work. Now they can go into that mid-tier 1 tower, and of course IDC, he really doesn't care, John. He'll tip you all game if he needs to.
Yeah, and that's a really good, timely movement out from IDC. He just shows up, he knows he's strong, he knows he can rip through the side of RNG if you're not careful.
They haven't got that mid-tier 1 yet. Here comes God King onto Son Goku. He has the Mana Chain out. Should be just fine, as they don't have the damage up with to burst him down. That's kind of another thing the panel talked about, is the profit into Timber. It doesn't feel that amazing as the mid lane now. They go back at 7E, a nice toss back onto Felix Schauber, but he's going to cookie back the other way. He is still alive, but should go down. But now 7E is going to be in danger. Icarus dive out into the egg and the front line there from Son Goku. Another stun from Flyby to hold him down with God King. He's going to be able to avoid the egg stun. Felix Schauber now, unfit the Sunray. Did fight back for this team fight. But SAG, they're fine. They're going to back right out and make it so that that buyback means nothing.
Yeah, and they're starting to play a lot better as a team now at SAG. They know when to push forward, they know when to pull back. RNG is the one bit scattered. I mean, sure, you have your Ags on D-Stones, that's great. Very vulnerable in the front once he's held down. He needs maybe a BKB this game just to be able to use his spells and not get controlled up. You're also seeing some issues now holding the Timber Saw, as you mentioned. I mean, you just don't have enough control to lock in the Tim just yet.
Well, they jump in, Flyby. He's got the stun off on the Ursa into the Stampede. That's a very nice pick off. IDC can't really farm in that area anymore, and Flyby lets him know about it. Gives him the tip immediately. He was just farming the wrong side of the map, and of course, straight into Roshan now. D-Stones, he will throw out some axes.
Oh my god.
An axe for you, an axe for you. He gets stunned up for a second. That's probably the longest cooldown he's had all game. Get the Aegis now. SAG, they're still yet to get the mid-tier 1. So RNG now with the Aegis can hold for another 5 minutes.
And they're just so disciplined. They know when to jump in. They knew that the backup from the sports wouldn't have been enough without the egg and only static storm. Like, you're lacking pieces of the combination. They're playing with the aggressive wards they have in that top jungle, just getting enough information to get the rotations out. And SAG, I mean, they're still not too far behind. It's 10 to 11 this time, so much more kills coming out for SAG, especially compared to game 1. 1K lead for RNG isn't unplayable. There's a lot of catch-up potential. We still got an Ursa who can flash farm a hell very fast with Battle Fury and with a blink up as well. So there's much more IDC can do in this game. He just needs to hit those points with his farm. Like, he's saving up for the BKB, going into his Ags, gonna try to build up, hopefully seeing that Ag chart as well down the line somewhere in the middle of that build. They're still trying to apply pressure in that mid-tier 1, but their push is Timbersaw standing in front. It's just not very quick. They should be able to find it this time, but it's almost 20 minutes in. That's a lot of value already for RNG despite losing it.
Yeah, interesting decision though from RNG to let it go down. Looks like they were just kind of done with it altogether. They just ended up kind of spending that time farming instead. Group up again to the Dire jungle here. Son Goku gonna lead the charge. IDC really wants to farm, but this is a very dangerous position. They're going to move in now onto XCJ instead with the stun out. They do get the kill. SAG has been very predominantly just kind of hanging around this Dire jungle, not opting to take the Radiant side.
Yeah, and that's what we've seen from them in game 1. They're just always on the opposite side of the map, being the aggressors. They're not satisfied with just sitting back with all their heroes. SAG's in that spot where they're stuck on their own side of the map. And you're seeing another discrepancy here in terms of vision. You can see aggressive wards from RNG now in the triangle, keeping track of that movement in that area, knowing where the Ursa is farming, knowing where the rest of the supports are hanging out. And there's just no aggressive wards from SAG. Now, they're not under as much pressure to maximize their teamfight spells. Like, you're not necessarily looking to always use Static Storm and Egg in this case, but it's still sort of detrimental allowing RNG to play this fast.
Trying to chase down Super on the Nyx Assassin. He's going to be just fine. And look at this immediately. Up toward that top tier 2 tower. Start pushing it down. You know they can't rotate to defend. In fact, never mind they can. Son Goku will be there to defend. But you're just never happy with this, are you? Just being around this area. At least they do get Felix Schaubert down to the bot side. So IDC, he does get a kill on the Ursa. Now D-Stones, threatening to throw the Roar out. Doesn't quite find the range for it. You know, IDC is making me very happy with all these voice lines, John. I do love a bit of banter.
Yeah, I mean, it's lining up with his name right now. He doesn't care. Like, last time he had, what, 0 kill participation on the PL? 0-2-0? And that just really showed. He didn't care. He just wanted to farm. This time, he doesn't care if his teammates die. He knows he's on Ursa. He knows he's got a lot of spikes coming in. He is almost at that point for the BKB. You also see 7E saving up for the Ag Shard. So again, focusing on a bit more of that right-click timing. He's got the Echo Saber up and running. So there's a lot that he can do with having no charge on the tree grab and just being able to constantly get that damage off. It is going to be big. Like, RNG, I don't think we've seen any of them queue up, say, a Halberd so far, so you're not going to have the disarm option yet for the Ursa or the Tiny. And that could be an issue once this Tiny's able to stand in front and get the damage off. You will always have Ward to back you up to stop the Tiny from just focusing people down, but then you use the Roar and Tiny, everyone else is free to do what they want. So you have to be careful with target prioritization here for RNG.
Barely miss out on God King in that mid lane, and now a counter smoke is out. RNG seem to be very well aware of what's happened. We did see Son Goku. Not quite the target they want to start on, but they may have no choice in the matter. SAG going to show themselves in that top tier 1 tower. God King will be there to defend. Nature's Wrath out immediately. And inside jungle now, they found someone in the backline. It's going to be SRF. He gets the Static Storm down with the Yules up, but he is set to die and does go down. XCJ, he'll lose the egg immediately, and now they control up Timbersaw. However, God King, he was controlled up by IDC. He will die on the Nature's Prophet, but will it matter? Can they get IDC as a trade? Not quite. A 7E now, jumping right back in for an avalanche toss. Does blow up D-Stones, and now Flyby. Also, Dire's Super will try to TP out, but it's a complete team wipe. They clean him up. SAG. I say team wipe, Felix Shalba. Still alive and just running away, but it's a great team fight out for the Dire, and just, it didn't look like a great start, John. They lost both supports, but it seems like the Ursa just bought so much time. And you see it here in this replay, it was just immediately SRF goes down, he got the Yules off, but it didn't really matter. The Egg's gone, but after that, God King just being caught out by the Ursa, trying to TP away, but there was no chance in hell of that happening. And, well, they just couldn't kill IDC.
Yeah, they have an issue right now. They're kind of just dropping to that physical burst damage on hand from SAG. The supports, they didn't care because they dropped their spells. They got Static Storm anyway, they got the Egg off, sure the Egg died, but that gave enough time for the rest of the heroes of SAG to collapse into that same area. And the isolation they had was not ideal. Like, you don't want your NP to just man up and just right-click fight an Ursa. You lose that one. Fury Swipes just drag you down, and you're not that durable in the NP. You need to play with that spacing out. And they couldn't even kill off the Timbersaw in that fight as well. Isolated up top, they were forced to respond to IDC instead. So you're starting to find a grasp here in the game for SAG in the exchanges. These spikes with the Ag Shard on their Tiny, and even the Ag Shard here on Son Goku, just allows them so much more utility from these two heroes.
These stones, the Avalanche Toss is out, and they blow up the Beastmaster again. IDC will not let them forget about it. They look for more now. Son Goku gone to the Tier 2 tower instead. Love the fact that Flamethrower affects buildings now, by the way. Very, very good stuff.
Yeah.
Does give him a bit more push on the Timber.
Yeah, I mean, we love to say Timbersaw doesn't push well beyond just allowing his creeps to hit. Now he can actually push. So that kind of fixes one of the issues of the Timbersaw when it comes down to objectives. He's got a lot more presence, and that Tier 2 going down opens up a lot of possibilities for SAG. They've got a deep set of wards now in the triangle area. They know where RNG is going to want to play and farm up. That allows them to have better access towards the next Roshan as well. And speaking of Rosh, I think they took that last fight around the time Aegis expired. So we're seeing these openings for SAG line up pretty much around Aegis expiring. And they're always disciplined enough to be able to come in, find a kill right as Aegis expires, and it's just such calculated timings here from SAG to maximize their counterplay.
Look at Son Goku. He's even got the Dragon Tail up on, so he's got even more magic damage going onto that tower as they try to move in. Impels out, flyby with the follow-up stun, but the Static Storm dropped immediately. And now, how do you fight back? IDC moving in. The BKB was there in time, but the Roar didn't connect. God King just trying to get himself out of there. IDC, he'll go straight onto Felix Shalba, but he will be fine for now as XCJ does die, but they do eventually get the Snapfire in the end. But in comes the side of RNG, back onto 70, and that'll be your Tiny gone. SAG perhaps getting a little bit too excited. Who take a bad team fight for themselves, and luckily for them, they don't lose too much, but it's not going to feel great losing that mid-Tiny. And in fact, IDC, he's not safe yet. Super is on the chase. He'll be just fine by the Tier 2 tower. Unless Flyby somehow catches him, but he's a bit too far away. So overall, SAG, they lose a little bit, but they are going to be able to back off, and they keep the Ursa alive, which I think is just probably the most important fact.
Yeah, SAG's not going to be too upset about that. They are slightly ahead in farm now. They're getting a bit more on their course overall. You're lagging behind here on RNG with your Centaur, with your Beastmaster sort of just dropping behind. So there's a significant enough, well, not significant, it's like 1k, but there is a gap between these cores that you can play with for SAG. And they just need some of these items to come out. IDC still needs the Ags up into the BKB. He still has not picked up the Shard, but I'm sure that's coming down the line maybe after the Ags comes through. And once you have that Enrage with the Stomp in, you're going to be really hard to control up. Really like that in the last fight as well, where Felix just stood his ground, focused on the Egg, and still managed to get out in time. He died in the backline because of the tree toss, but that was just enough to salvage that. Like, taking that Egg out allowed him to turn on the Tiny afterwards and just managed to get a little bit more from that exchange for RNG. So they're still finding some openings as well into the team fight of SAG. They have to be cautious. They need to secure this Rosh as SAG's got the better position for that objective right now.
We're going to try. So RNG should know about this, and they do, it seems. The board does start moving its way in. Roshan's currently on fire, which is not going to feel quite nice, but the Mortimer's Kisses are going to fly in. There's going to be even more fire as the Roshan is a bit too low on IDC. He has the Aegis, but now 7E has been caught out of the Tiny, or has he? It's going to be just fine with the egg follow-up. God King now, still just trying to fight, does get some Goku, but needs to run as the Icarus Dive does move in, and the Prince Pack is there onto God King, and IDC just wants to burst him down. God King eventually going to die to the fire damage as they move in for more. IDC, he does get rolled up. They might be able to turn now and at least get the Aegis off him, and 7E, he has gone way too far into the back lines. He'll die in the Tiny with that SAG. I think they're done with this team fight. It's not quite as good as you would have hoped. In fact, RNG are going to move in for a little bit more as D-Stones will just not stop throwing axes. Eventually they do back out, and John, as you can see by the recap, it's not great. They even lost the Aegis, so you don't really get any benefit for that Roshan.
You got one big benefit here, Mike. Free Ag Shard for IDC. That was the worst Roche to give out to the side of SCG. Sure, they drop heroes. Sure, they kind of just burn the Aegis through, but the free Ag Shard upgrade for the year, so that's big. And it's only the second Roche that gets that. So IDC just gets a free ride into that Enrage buff. He doesn't have to expend 1.4k gold. It's still wonky, but you still get something from it from SCG, so I can understand why they kind of threw their bodies in. Maybe a bit too keen on the fight afterwards, but you're starting to build up here on your Ursa. It's becoming the Ursa show, and you just need to build up here.
Done XCJ, Icarus Dive is there, but it's, or rather, Yules is there, but it's not going to matter, as he could not get the Icarus Dive off in time. You know, John, going back to those Ursa shards, I love that about Ice Frog, right? Like, everyone complained last patch that the status resist thing was just too much, right? The meta of status resist was, yeah, it's a bit too much for these carries, right? But then he just kind of gives, he gives Enrage a 6-second cooldown with Earthshock. It's, you know, he loves his status resist. I don't understand it.
Yep, it's really darn good on Ursa. Now, it's kind of nice, I guess. Like, it feels like Ursa's the only real hero right now who can really get that stacked up on him. Could be a good fight here as well, as they are sort of clumped up. You can see the vision changing. Very close from both sides, but RNG play it safe. They didn't have vision there. They had enough foresight to back off, and they had a Hawk scouting the backside anyway, so they play it safe. They still are lagging behind slightly in net worth, less than 1k. We do see some really good build-up here on our MP. You've got the Satanic up for God King, so you can stand there, really man-fight against the Ursa if you want to. You still want to have a bit of a gap between yourself and the Ursa, but you've got some option to prolong your presence there as well. And the Actrod's being saved up here as well by Flyby, and you do see the smoke coming through here for RNG.
See what they can do with it. Right into the die triangle is where they want to go, and IDC is on the low ground right now, but they haven't made their way up to the high ground yet, RNG. Not even going to try and go into the triangle. They're just going to hang around this bot side of the Radiant jungle. It's going to be enough, it seems. It's pushing out that bot wave. Now the counter smoke is there. SAG, they want to try and capitalize off this. Son Goku, the only one showing on the map at the moment. Seems though RNG is well aware of what's happening. They also back out in time. Of course, with this Prophet, you will just keep split pushing the map, and there's not really much they can do about it. So SAG probably just going to have to back off.
I don't think they're too upset. Like, they're still keeping up with the farm game despite getting split pushed. The objectives are slowly melting though, so that does force the response out from Son Goku. He is going to be forced to deny the top tier 2. So a little bit more map space opening up here with 2 tier 2s just falling. RNG do open up the map a lot more to start really split pushing and applying pressure with the NP. But SAG are still hitting some item beats here. Ahead now on the Ursa by about 1,000 gold. Not massive, but it's notable now for the Ursa to be that step up. And again, with the Battle Fury, this kind of AFK farming game does work out a lot better for IDC. You're also saving up here for the Tiny to go into that build-up for the AC. Last I checked, 7 just again going for physical build-up. Once you have the AC, your right-click damage is a lot faster with the attack speed you get, and which really helps you maximize the shard build-up on the physical build. And maybe even after that, we see something like the Daedalus come in, or even, say, the Ags would be nice as well for the Tree Volley. So there's a lot of options to keep scaling here for SAG, whereas for RNG, I mean, maybe you could flip
Flyby
Xiaobo.
goes straight into XCJ. They do get the Static Storm down, but it's not going to matter. They'll lose the Phoenix. Onto SRF they go. Flyby, he'll pop the Stampede. There'll be a buyback from XCJ. They do need the egg, but the side of RNG are already backing out. Flyby will just TP away. 7E, he does at least get the Avalanche cancellation, but now the Spider Legs. Flyby is going to try and run. XCJ will follow up with the Sunray, and the Chakram does land. They do get something with the buyback from the Phoenix, but overall, I guess it's not really too great for either side. I think RNG will probably be maybe a little bit more satisfied with that team fight.
Yeah, you force out a buyback, you're pretty happy enough on RNG's end. SAG, they do still at least hold on to the egg, and they're able to apply some pressure on the bot tier 2 themselves. They can try to get some more control on the bot jungle here, maintain pressure on the map, counteract the pressure that the NP is trying to get out here, and still kind of work yourself with a pretty good game. It's really even now, 20-20, 1K lead for RNG. Neither side really getting a massive lead in this game at all. You can see bouncing around there on the charts. So we're seeing much more of a fight from SAG. And again, as this game goes on, it does feel like their scaling is nicer. There's a lot of utility on RNG's end. We've seen some great fights coming out with really good positioning from Felix Xiaobo to stand back, get the kisses off, get the good gore target off. But when it comes to pure right hook damage from all these cores, you do scale a lot better with the Ursa.
Oh, top lane, super. The Impale on the 4-star will stick around for the mana drain, but the Yules is out from SRF, and Super now may have gone a bit too far. He's going to try and TP, but the glimpse is there. Super, he'll turn back around onto SRF, but well, there you go. He just laughs about it. Obviously, a very optimistic kind of play there from Super. Does not pan out for him.
Yeah, it's Keen. I mean, after he got his combination off, couldn't find a kill, couldn't quite get out in time. And it's just a little bit more for SAG to play with. You could argue that space, it's not really much on the map for RNG to maximize that space with. So you're happy about the freebie on SAG. You've stalled out enough that there's a heart here on the Timbersaw. And the control factor on the Tim, the burst damage for the Tim, it just starts to feel like it's not enough. You're going to have issues focusing down these cores. Heart up, AC potentially coming out for a 7E. There's so much tanking, so much armor to have to eat through. And your NP, it doesn't feel like it hits hard. At least compared to an Ursa, compared to a Tiny with a Shard. It just doesn't feel like you're getting the same impact here from God King. Now, he does have his AC up on his own, so it will counteract the incoming AC in terms of aura armor reduction, but beyond that, like, you need a lot more on the NP here to really feel comfy in a man fight against these bigger cores.
It's going to be a kind of medium Roshan timers. Both teams do try and check out the Roshan pip, but it is about 2 minutes away. AG, very careful here. R&D are starting to move in. They got the Impale off, but IDC, he has the Aghanim Scepter now. Problem is the Roar is there, but IDC with that status resist is going to be able to back off and maybe reinitiate with his team. He does go into Flyby. Some Goku dropping low, but there's your Static Storm now out right at the God King. He'll pop the Satanic and try to survive, but they've caught out the Ursa now. In the backlines, IDC is trying to survive with that enrage, but can he survive the damage? He cannot. D-Stones does get the kill, and now they move on for more. They move on for the rest. As SAG, they are just dropping like flies. They'll lose another. RNG finding 3 for their trouble. It's a very unfortunate scenario for SAG is, and I felt like you couldn't have asked for a better usage of the Aghanim Scepter and Rage on IDC, but it just didn't prove to be enough. There's just too much disable on RNG's end.
The big issue there for SAG was the fact that, yeah, he got out with the Ag Scepter and Rage. He didn't fight with it. He was retreating for the most part. SAG comes in the latter half of the fight. It's too late to maximize your Ursa's tankiness in front, so the damage output wasn't great, and now their high ground's being sieged.
That it is. God King is hitting very, very fast, as most Nature's Prophets do, and they do roar up. The Timbersaw now, some Goku, going to be okay, but an Impel is there from Super. They'll get the tier 3, they'll force the buyback out from 7E, and God King, I'm not sure about sticking around. He's just man-fighting against 3 of them. He does not care. He's not moving, and Flyby is right back in. They'll get SRF and force even more buybacks out, as Flyby now will pop the Stampede. They can't cancel the TP out, or maybe they can God King. He does get cancelled. He is stuck around a little bit too long, and is eventually going to die. So while it was a lot of buybacks being committed, they do get the carry profit.
Yeah, and that lines up really well because the Roshan is just up. So SAG can just go into it without worrying about the NP now. There's still an opportunity for RNG to fight there.
I mean, the Roshan is happening. I was just watching the Nyx Assassin for a second. Like, we'll talk about it later, because this Roshan fight should be starting any minute now, even without God King, as IDC, that is so much damage being dealt out onto the Ursa.
Oh, this is...
Go back in for that Roshan pit now, John.
Should be a bit risky. Good Ags timing here from our Centaur, but you do have the Egg back up from SAG. No Static Storm yet. You really want both spots up to really take control of that pit. They only put Son Goku in the front, and they do smoke around. They want to find a pick off first before cleaning up the Roche.
I mean, they need this Roshan to go down before God King's back, but the problem is he has buyback gold now, so he can actually rejoin the team fight. These stones immediately jumped on, but he gets the BKB and the roar off onto 7E, and now Flyby is there with the follow-up. It's a really nice egg, but is it going to matter? Not quite. They burst it down immediately. Now God King trying to man-fight the Ursa. It's not the greatest of ideas. They're just focusing down the MP. Can he survive God King? He will.
Oh.
He will survive a little bit longer as he'll turn right back around on Son Goku. He finds another kill, and the GG score.
Oh my god. Ooh. I mean,
Well,
they
just
had no buybacks.
left.
It's just too much,
What an ending.
and RNG. I mean, they took a chance there, SAG. They were trying to smoke around, get the pick off, but once the BKBs came up, there's just nothing they had on control to stop the Beastmaster from getting the damage off.
Definitely